Monarchs, this is Ms. Hayes, and today we're going to talk about how to organize ideas in paragraphs and essays. And this works for short paragraphs, for medium paragraphs, and even for long paragraphs. Your essential question for today is, how can I use main idea chunks to improve the organization in my writing? Make sure you write this down in the essential questions section of your Cornell notes. So before you can fully understand this lecture, it would be super helpful for you to have watched the video on how to write the 11-sentence critical analysis paragraph, which is available on my YouTube channel and also on my class website at mrsdutro.org. And so before watching this video, please make sure that you have taken notes on that first video. Specifically, you really need to know the purposes of topic sentences, supporting claim sentences, textual evidence sentences, explanation sentences, and concluding sentences. Just a quick review, the topic sentence in a paragraph is the sentence that tells your reader what the paragraph is going to be about. So if you're having trouble writing a topic sentence, answer the prompt using one sentence and very few details. Kind of vague in your answer, because the rest of the paragraph is where you're going to get more specific. The supporting claims introduce an idea that supports the topic sentence, and usually they identify a reason your topic sentence is a true statement or a valid opinion. So if you're saying that a character has changed a lot over the course of a text, then your supporting claim number 1 might be how the character was at the beginning of the text. Number 2 could be what the character was like in the middle of the text. And then number 3 would be how the character was at the end of the text. And then you have textual evidence sentences, and these use that 3-step process for embedding evidence to back up your supporting claims with evidence from reliable resources. So these should also end with parenthetical citations, as always. So if our first supporting claim is how the character was at the beginning of the text, then you should have a direct quote from the text illustrating that that character was what you said that character was. If that character started out very innocent, you need a quote proving that that character was very innocent. And then your second piece of evidence might show how the character started to become a little bit more corrupt. And then your final piece of evidence would have that full-blown corruption of that character to show how that character changed over the course of a text. And then you need your explanation sentences, and that is where you explain how the evidence backs up your supporting claim and your topic sentence. And this is part of that 3-step process for embedding evidence. It's not enough to just put a quote in there and leave it at that. You have to tell your reader what to think about that quote. And then finally, paragraphs have concluding sentences, and that's the last sentence in your paragraph. And if you're writing a standalone paragraph, then it should paraphrase the topic sentence. If you are writing a multi-paragraph essay, then this sentence should transition to the next paragraph. Also remember that we learned that one supporting claim, one piece of evidence, and one explanation create a main idea chunk. And those main idea chunks are what we're talking about in this video. So the biggest thing you need to remember is that every paragraph and essay you write will be a combination of main idea chunks, introductory statements, and concluding statements. Pretty much everything you write in school in which you explain your learning is going to be a combination of main idea chunks and introductory statements and concluding statements.
All right, so here I have my different types of sentences that could go in a paragraph. So I have my topic sentence and concluding sentence. I have my supporting claim, my textual evidence, and my explanation. So first thing we're going to do is make a main idea chunk. So I'm going to take this main idea chunk and I'm going to set it off to the side here so that I know that it's not an actual sentence, it's just a chunk. So first thing I need in a main idea chunk is a supporting claim. Then I need my evidence. Then I need my explanation. And that creates one main idea chunk. Now, this could stand alone as its own paragraph. However, you're rarely expected at this point in your high school career to just have one piece of textual evidence. So normally I ask you for 2 pieces of textual evidence. If you need to write a paragraph with 2 pieces of evidence, that would be a medium-sized paragraph. So in this case, you need to have 2 main idea chunks because you need another piece of evidence, which dictates that you have another main idea chunk. We always need to introduce this evidence with a supporting claim. And we need to follow it up with an explanation. So now I have my 2 main idea chunks. Here's main idea chunk number 1, main idea chunk number 2. Okay, so this makes a chunk, just like that. Now, because I have 2 main idea chunks now, it's not enough to just have a supporting claim starting off my paragraph and an explanation ending it. Because I have 2 different ideas going on in one paragraph, I need to tie them together with a topic sentence. And if I'm going to have a topic sentence, I also need to have a concluding sentence, just like that. So now there's my paragraph. But let's say I need to make an even longer paragraph. I can do that simply by adding another main idea chunk. So let's say my teacher said, explain 3 strategies the author uses to communicate tone within a paragraph. If that's the case, then I know that this first main idea chunk is going to be the first strategy. I'll introduce the second strategy with another main idea chunk. And now I need to make room for my third strategy. So I'm going to do that before my concluding sentence. So I'm going to have another supporting claim. This is where I introduce the strategy. Another strategy the author uses is juxtaposition. And my textual evidence, for example, the author compares this idea to this idea in this example. And then you have, boom, your quote would go there. And then the explanation. The juxtaposition of these 2 ideas helps to create tone by blah, 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 blah. And that's another main idea chunk. So I can have 3 main idea chunks in a paragraph. And guess what? That's an 11-sentence paragraph. So if your teacher asks you to identify 3 strategies, you know there's strategy 1 in that main idea chunk, strategy 2 there, strategy 3 there. If your teacher asks you to explain 3 reasons you believe something, you would have reason 1, reason 2, reason 3. If your teacher asks you to analyze the development of a character over the course of a text, you might have the character at the beginning of the text, in the middle of the text, and in the end of the text. So in this case, you have 3 ideas, and you introduce these ideas using the same pattern within your 1 paragraph. But let's say I want to write an essay. Now, in this case, I could have an essay in which I have my introduction paragraph. Perhaps I have a topic sentence with my main idea chunk, main idea chunk, main idea chunk. And then of course I'm going to have my concluding sentence. And then I'm going to have 3 of these paragraphs before I have a concluding paragraph.
All right, so now you know how to write paragraphs with just 1 chunk. You know how to write a paragraph with 2 chunks, how to write one with 3 chunks, how to take these multi-chunk paragraphs and put them together into a multi-paragraph essay. But how many chunks do you know that you need when you sit down to write? Well, it depends on your prompt. So strong writers figure out how many paragraphs and how many chunks they will need in each paragraph before they start writing. They're not going to sit down and say, okay, I'm just going to start brain dumping onto the page and then turn this in and hope for the best. Instead, they ask themselves, all right, what are the things that I need to talk about in this essay? If there are 3 things, perhaps I need to have a 3-chunk paragraph. If there's only 2 things, maybe I need a 2-chunk paragraph. Maybe there's 3 things, and then there's sub-things, smaller things to talk about within these 3 things. In that case, I need a multi-paragraph essay. So this is done during the outlining process. Before you even start writing, you want to come up with a quick outline of what it is that you need to do in your paper. And sometimes this is just done in the margin of a page, just super quick. Sometimes you have a much more detailed outline. It depends on the length of the paper that you're writing and on how much time you actually have to write it. All right, so here are some things that prompts will typically ask you to do. First, the prompt might specify a certain amount of textual evidence, and that's it. It might say, hey, question, here's your question, please use 2 pieces of textual evidence to support your claim. Well, in that case, you should have 1 chunk per piece of evidence, so you should have 2 pieces of evidence. Or if it asks for 4 pieces of evidence to support your claim, then you should have 4 chunks. If it asks for 1 piece of evidence to support your claim, you only need 1 chunk. Does the prompt ask you to provide reasons for something? In that case, you should have 1 chunk per reason. Does the prompt ask you to analyze multiple literary devices in a text or multiple components of a text? In that case, you should have 1 chunk per component or per device. Does the prompt ask you to explain strategies an author uses to accomplish something? If so, you should have 1 chunk per strategy. Does the prompt ask you to compare 2 texts? If that's the case, you should have a minimum of 2 chunks. So that's 1 chunk per text. Each chunk should specify how the evidence is similar to the other text. Now, let's say you're analyzing, let's say the prompt is asking you to compare the character development within 2 texts. Well, in that case, you're going to need more than 2 chunks. In that case, you might need 2 paragraphs. 1 paragraph per text, so that's 2 paragraphs, with 2 chunks per paragraph. So you have a paragraph showing character development at the beginning of the text, and so you have a chunk showing the character development at the beginning of a text, and a chunk showing the character development at the end of the text for your first text, and then you'll have another paragraph in which you do the same thing for the second text with 2 chunks. Or the prompts might ask you to contrast 2 texts to explain how those 2 texts are different from each other. So once again, you need a minimum of 2 chunks, but if the prompt is asking you to contrast 2 characters' development, then you may need to have multiple chunks to support 1 text, to support the differences between them. In that case, you may need a multi-paragraph essay. But if you're asked to contrast the tone of 2 texts, then perhaps you only need 2 chunks total, just 1 chunk per text. Or perhaps the prompt is asking you to both compare and contrast 2 texts. Well, in this case, you need a minimum of 4 chunks because you're being asked to do 2 separate things with 2 separate texts. So that's 4 things that you have to do. So for 1 text, you're going to have to explain how it's similar to the other text, so that requires evidence from both texts. And then you're also going to have to explain how the 2 texts are different from each other, so that requires another 2 chunks, so that's 4. In this case, it may be better to split it up into 2 paragraphs. However, you could get away with having this as 1 long paragraph. Personally, I prefer to have 2 paragraphs in this instance. I don't like super, super long paragraphs, but I mean, it's really up to you, and you could just see how it reads. So here's a quick review. There are 5 types of sentences. Main idea chunks use 3 of these sentences. And then there are 3 types of paragraphs. And standalone paragraphs can have 1, 2, 3, or even 4 main idea chunks, and these are always framed with a topic sentence and a concluding sentence. And essays consist of an introduction paragraph, 2 or more body paragraphs with 1, 2, 3, or even 4 main idea chunks, and 1 concluding paragraph. And that's all I have for you for today. Please make sure you take a moment to chunk your notes, add questions for each chunk, highlight the main ideas and important details from each chunk, and also summarize your notes in the summary section by answering the essential question. And if you have any questions, you can email me at kelly.hayes@aps.edu, or you can check out my website at mrsdutro.org, and I will see you tomorrow.